Part 31. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 301. Chapter 301. Brother, do you like Sister Zhang? This kid is a little stupid. Well, I can see it. Shen Heshen, who was walking behind the two of them, couldn't help but touch his head. As long as he doesn't admit it, it's not him who is saying this. As they walked to the door of the cafeteria, the two happened to bump into Mr. Shi and Li Wangxuan, who were preparing to leave. In agreement, we temporarily stepped back to let the two elders go first. Out of the door, Zhang Lingzi first said hello, old Shi, Mr. Li. The two old men first looked at Zhang Lingzi, then at Shen Yunqing standing next to her, and nodded with a smile. Mr. Shi said in a familiar tone, "Are you ready to go back? Go back to the hotel and rest." "That's right, you've had a tiring day today, so go back and rest early. The program team will probably have a lot of work tomorrow. You two should be careful on your way back." When they got off the elevator together, Shi Lao and his wife looked at each other silently. Zhang Xiao and Mr. Shen both seemed to be outstanding young people. When they walked together this time, he immediately thought of the word "a good match." However, although the two children seemed to get along quite naturally, they did not clearly explain what their relationship was, so he did not ask explicitly. He still knows some things in the entertainment industry, but emotional issues are sometimes taboo. Everyone separated in front of the TV station door. After watching the two old men get into the car and leave, Zhang Lingzi looked back and saw the Su family siblings chasing after them, so she stopped and waited. She didn't move, and Shen Yunqing also stood waiting. Upon seeing this, Zhang Lingzi asked, "Are you staying in the hotel opposite too?" Shen Heshen, who was following behind, immediately pricked up his ears. No, he stayed in Ziwan specifically to meet his cousin, but his cousin actually stayed in the hotel arranged by the program team. So did he feel lonely after going back and forth? Without. Zhang Lingzi immediately knew that he just wanted to wait with her. She waved her hand and said, "I live across the street and will go back a few steps away. You live far away from here, so take your brother back quickly." Shen Yunqing glanced at the steady flow of traffic in front of him and said, "I see you should cross the road before walking." Fortunately, Suyi and Sicheng had already rushed over, and the road in front of them had just turned green. Zhang Lingzi waved to Shen Yunqing, "See you tomorrow." Then he led everyone across the zebra crossing neatly. Shen Yunqing kept watching the figure enter the door of the hotel opposite before looking back, turning to look at Shen Heshen's curious eyes. "Let's go." Shen Heshen hurriedly raised his feet and followed behind him, opening and closing his mouth until he got into the car. He closed the car door to isolate the noise outside, and was blown by the air conditioning in the car. He boldly looked to his side. "Brother, do you like Sister Zhang?" Shen Yunqing suddenly paused in buckling his seat belt. After 3 seconds of silence, he turned to look into Shen Heshen's curious eyes. He has always felt that his little cousin was stupid, and he never thought that this child could actually ask such a question that was so overwhelming to him. After a while, he asked in a low voice, "Is it so obvious?" Shen Heshen shook his head. He had always regarded his cousin as a god. This was the first time he found confidence in his cousin. "If it were anyone else, I might not be able to see it. But cousin, you this time." He paused and then said quietly, "This is the first time I've seen you, cousin, be so cautious in front of girls. You are afraid that they will be unhappy, but you can't help but want to care about them. Maybe you don't even care about them. Realize that when you are around that Sister Zhang, you are so different from usual." Shen Yunqing turned his head and looked out the car window. "Okay, stop talking." He considers himself to be introverted. If it weren't for Shen Heshen, a cheap cousin who dared to talk to him about anything, he really didn't expect that he would have exposed so many flaws. However, Shen Heshen had no intention of giving up this time. He still remembered how he was disliked in the cafeteria just now. He pulled the seat belt on his chest and walked over. "Brother, have you not caught up with Sister Zhang yet?" This time he was answered by a long, slender hand, which pushed him back to his seat without any explanation. "Shut up." Until the car drove into Z1, Shen Yunqing was thinking about why Shen Heshen changed his name to Sister Zhang. Why did that person laugh? Are you laughing at his cowardice? Asterisk. I was wondering why Shen Heshen suddenly changed his name to Sister Zhang unexpectedly. He turned out to be Mr. Shen's cousin. Lu Zhengzheng stood behind Zhang Lingzi and helped to unzip the dress. Her little mouth kept chattering, "Is this good? I won't call Zixi sister cousin in private." Tong Yu came over with the tablet in her arms and glared at Lu Zhengzheng. "You are the most talkative in the whole room, but what's going on? Why did Mr. Shen suddenly become the reviewer?" After saying that, he looked at the person who was putting on his clothes. Zhang Lingzi in bathrobe. Zhang Lingzi her bathrobe and replied in a nonchalant tone, "Just treat him as idol." Chairman of the Shen group, "Are you free?" Tong Yu said she didn't believe a hair in this answer. Seeing her artist's eyebrows stretched and clearly in a good mood, she suddenly had a plan in her heart and schemed over the topic. "Let's get down to business. How was the recording today? Did it go well?" Lu Zhengzheng complained in a low voice. "Sister Tong, the other guests have gone to record the show. Sister Zixi just purchased some goods and recorded a show on the way." "Incoming goods? What kind of goods are incoming?" "I bought some pens, ink, paper, and inkstones, but the quantity is a bit too much. The delivery address is the company. It will take about a week to arrive. Sister Tong, please sign for it for me at the company." "Tong Yu, why did you buy so many pens, inks, paper and inkstones? Don't tell me that you want to take this opportunity to set up a literary and artistic establishment. This establishment can be established. I don't object, but it is tiring to maintain it. Not to mention, Jing Huai is an example. The persona of such an elegant and aristocratic young man is almost forcibly stereotyped by fans. Others don't know it, but she has seen this man go hysterical and crazy with her own eyes. He doesn't look like a noble man at all. In other words, he is more like a madman. You are overthinking. I just want to make use of the almost deserted study room at home," Zhang Lingzi said and yawned. "Today's recording went very well. I'm tired, Sister Tong." Tong Yu immediately stopped asking questions and waved her hand. "Okay, hurry up and wash up and rest. I don't know what the program team will do tomorrow." Zhang Lingzi lay down here, while the three people in the living room were still busy. Lu Zhengzheng and Su Linggan were sorting out the clothes they had changed out of today, and the other was preparing the clothes they would wear tomorrow. Tong Yu was sitting on the sofa, listening to the two of them talking about what happened today. Mainly Lu Zhengzheng was talking, and Su Linggan helped to supplement from time to time. "Sister Tong, Su Qingmei is also one of the reviewers for this issue." Tong Yu's relaxed expression suddenly changed. "Why is she here too? Didn't she target you, Sister Zixi, during the recording?" Lu Zhengzheng shook his head. "This time the commentator and the guests are recorded separately, and we are not very clear about the recording process on the commentator's side." He hesitated and said, "But Mr. Shen is here, should everything be okay?" Tong Yu just thought of this, and her expression suddenly relaxed. "Yes, the other reviewers may have some scruples because of Su Qingmei's reputation, but as Mr. Shen, there is no need to save face for her. However, with Mr. Shen's character, she couldn't imagine what this person would look like when he was quarreling with others. By the way, there is also this dress." Lu Zhengzheng picked up the dress that she had just ironed, touched it and took a closer look at it. She said in a somewhat uncertain tone, "I saw what Mr. Shen was wearing today. The clothes are also gray, and the fabric is somewhat similar to this one." Su Lingyan paused, and then asked God to make a move, "Couple costume." As Tong Yu listened to the two of them talking, an idea flashed in her mind. She quickly grabbed the tablet nearby, clicked on the search bar, and entered, "Do the sub-brands of Shen Group include Shanyu's Haiheng?" The reason why I searched like this was because I was afraid that there were too many brands and she wouldn't be able to read them. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 302. Chapter 302, The moon on the mountain is still sinking, but the moon is far behind. In less than 5 years, the brand Shanyu's Haiheng has become a high-end luxury clothing brand with great influence in the world. Last year, she was even invited to participate in the highest-profile international fashion awards. If she remembered correctly, it was on the hot search for several days. Since then, the popularity has remained high. Many celebrities don't just focus on big foreign brands when they go on the red carpet. Shanyu's Haiheng's red carpet dresses are not uncommon. As an entertainment agent, Tong Yu is naturally much more sensitive to this type of information than ordinary people. Occasionally, it is not uncommon for an artist under my control to have the dream of being endorsed by the Shanyu's Haiheng brand. But she never thought that Shanyu's Haiheng would be related to the Shen Group. After all, based on public disclosures and information searched on the internet, the Shen Group has always been engaged in traditional industries, such as national fashion clothing, entertainment in industries such as the industry that have only become popular in recent years. The Shen Group is not involved in it. But for a large group like this, unless the senior personnel within the group can master comprehensive information, the information that ordinary people can find through online information and other channels is only a little bit, and even the grassroots employees in the group may not know where it is. How many industries does the group involve in? The hotel's internet connection is very fast, and as soon as I drank some water to calm down my shock, the results were already out. 3 heads leaned in front of the tablet screen and looked at the answers below the questions. There are not many accounts that answer this question, both private and official. Lu Zhengzheng swiped the screen with her finger and found the one that looked most reliable and had the latest date. While looking at it, she read out loud, "Shanyu's Haiheng was founded in XX. It is currently one of the most well-known clothing brands in China. The founder Shanyu's Haiheng Chuyu founded Shanyu Zhiheng Studio on the eve of her graduation from college. It took less than 5 years to promote Shanyu Zhiheng internationally. However, there are rumors that Shen Chuyu has achieved such great success except for her outstanding performance. In addition to talent, there is also no lack of capital promotion. The most speculated one at the moment is that the person behind her is the Shen Group. After all, Shen Chuyu also has the surname Shen, and maybe she is a direct member of the Shen family. But Shen Chuyu herself has not responded to this point. Shanyu's Haiheng brand has not found the holdings of Shen Group, so the above is purely the editor's personal speculation. Please forgive me if it is offensive. Tong Yu rubbed her ears, turned her head and glanced at Lu Zhengzheng. There is no need to read the next 2 sentences. Lu Zhengzheng laughed, there is a beginning and an end. Su Linghan looked at the name that was specially marked in blue on the screen, and softly read out, Shen Chuyu. At once 2 pairs of eyes looked over. Does Anan also know this person? No, Su Linghan shook his head quickly. I just think the name sounds nice and has a very artistic conception. Indeed, Tong Yu and Lu Zhengzheng nodded in agreement. Then I looked for other answers, but none of them confirmed that Shanyu's Haiheng was under the Shen family. Most of them were just guesses. Tong Yu closed the tablet and waved her hands. Forget it, there's nothing to worry about, just let it take its course. You two have been following Xiao 11 all day, so go back to the house and take a shower and rest. Su Linghan paused when he walked to the door of the bedroom, hesitated but didn't say anything more. She actually has a guess. So far, she has only met 2 members of the Shen family. Brother-in-law Shen Yunqing, and brother-in-law's cousin Shen Heshan. Just by hearing their names, they have one thing in common, that is, they have an ancient charm and are not popular with the public. The name Shenchuo she just saw had the same style. However, just based on the similarity in their names, it cannot be so certain that they are a family. Zhang Lingzi didn't remember that she forgot to ask Shen Yunqing to confirm something until she was about to fall asleep. Did he have those 3 dresses delivered to Sister Tong? Squinting, he touched his phone and checked the time, then silently gave up the intention of sending a message. Since we can meet again tomorrow, there is no rush now. Asterisk. This side is already sleeping peacefully, but some people are still unable to sleep. Teacher Jing, Sister Su is in a bad mood today. The two looked at each other and smiled bitterly at the same time. If the people who need to be cared for are unhappy, they will naturally not be able to feel comfortable. He himself is not happy today either. First, he was surpassed by an amateur guest in the process of making brushes. After dinner, he was embarrassed by Su Qingmei. Fortunately, no one saw it at the time. The key is that he was later taught by a high school student or one of his fans not to waste food. He couldn't eat that meal, it was tasteless at all. Who can he turn to relieve his depression? Jing Hui suppressed the complaints in his heart and nodded empathetically, then let me talk to Sister Qingmei and see if I can make her feel better. Otherwise, he will be the one who gets the wrath. The assistant's face was immediately filled with relief. Thank you for your hard work, Teacher Zheng. A dead Taoist friend is not a poor Taoist. How can I not pay something for the benefit of being on this program? She watched Jing Hui leave. Today she was with Su Qingmei, but seeing Su Qingmei being frustrated repeatedly in front of Mr. Shen, it could be said that she had no face left at all. Later, it was discovered that Mr. Shen and Zhang Lingzi knew each other, and their relationship was not bad. This was another stab in Su Qingmei's frustrated heart. No one wants their embarrassed side to be seen by others, especially those under their command. As an assistant, all she can do now is to quietly stay out of the sight of her immediate boss and not to offend him. Fortunately, there is still Jing Hui who can take over. Jing Hui stood at the door of the presidential suite and knocked lightly. He waited for nearly a quarter of an hour before he heard, "Come in." Of course it was impossible for him to really roll in. After entering, he calmed down and walked towards the only balcony that was still lit. Sister Qingmei. Go, put on these clothes first and then come to me. Jing Hui looked in the direction of Su Qingmei's finger and saw a grey embroidered silk shirt. Although he was a little confused, he didn't dare to ask anything at the moment, so he picked it up and went to the bathroom nearby to change. After he changed his clothes and came out, Su Qingmei looked up when she heard the movement, and frowned at the sight. Not even close. Jing Hui didn't hear clearly and subconsciously asked, "What?" "It's nothing." Su Qingmei waved her hand perfunctorily and pointed in the direction of the sofa. "Just sit there, sit straight for me, don't talk, just sit there." Jing Hui. What's the fuss about? But he only needed to sit quietly and didn't need to be a vent. When he obediently walked to the sofa and sat down, he quietly breathed a sigh of relief in the dim light. I didn't hear Su Qingmei's vague murmur, "I finally feel something." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 303. Qian Yaya took her things, thanked her aunt student who had been with her behind the scenes all day today, and jumped in the door. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Qian Yuchaim turned his steps towards the study and walked towards the entrance with a cup in hand. I'm home. Qian Yaya was kicking off her shoes and lowering her head to change them when she was startled by a sudden voice behind her, "Auntie, you can't even walk without a sound." "I'm sorry." Qian Yihan patted his niece on the back, turned around and saw the extra things on the entrance cabinet. "What's this?" I made the ink sticks myself when she was in the studio. Qianyaya saw Zhang Lingzi buying a few small boxes to hold the ink sticks, so she followed suit. Since it is a gift, it must be packaged more formally. To my aunt, aren't the ink sticks you used to practice calligraphy running out? These are just for refill. It's my first time doing it, so maybe I didn't do it very well. Qian Yuchain looked at the small box handed to him, and his heart felt warm. Putting down the cup, he reached out and rubbed his niece's head. Okay, we Yaya have really grown up and we all know how to be filial to our aunt. She took the box and said, it doesn't matter if it's not done well. She opened it and saw the ink strips inside that were still a little white under the light. She paused and said, it's what I meant after all. She had no intention of collecting part of it, but now that she saw the real thing, she might as well collect it all. What is this? Seeing a piece of rolled up rice paper on the cabinet, she reached out to get it. What are you doing on the show? You can take it home. Wait a minute. Qianyaya's heart suddenly rang with alarm bells. She wanted to take the rice paper away without thinking, but she was still a step too late. Qian Yishan glared at her angrily, opened the rice paper and complained, I haven't seen any of your work since you were a child. I didn't even laugh at you when you painted a swan into a duck. What's wrong with you? Qianyaya didn't dare to reach out and grab it. The rice paper was thinner than ordinary paper, and she was afraid of accidentally tearing it. I could only watch the rice paper being opened. Huh? It's not a painting, it's a calligraphy. This character. The rice paper was only half opened, and the writing on it was just exposed. Qian Yishan recognized at a glance that it was not written by his niece. It's really not good. Qianyaya. She knew it. My aunt is usually a good talker, but when it comes to her profession, she is as sharp as she can be. It is not uncommon for students to cry. The paper was all unfolded. What does it say? Fresh clothes and angry horses, living up to one's youth, giving money to Yaya, Jinghuai. Is it the star you like? Is this written by him? Don't tell me that this is Yuan Zhao Ti. Qian Yuchan's face turned serious, and he rarely called his niece by her first and last name. Qianyaya, you are insulting my profession. Qianyaya wiped the sweat from his forehead and explained angrily, he actually told me in advance that Yuan Zhao's physical training was not very good. I didn't expect him to mean that he didn't practice very well. It's not very good. I thought he was being modest. Until she wrote it and saw it, she was almost dumbfounded on the spot. She has met most of her aunt's students, and it goes without saying that they are good at calligraphy. Although she herself does not focus on Yuan Zhao style, mainly because her writing skills are not up to par, and in her aunt's words, she is not qualified to practice Yuan Zhao style, but she still has the ability to appreciate it under the influence of her ears and eyes over the years. The word Jinghuai wrote, she really couldn't ignore her conscience and said that this is Yuan Zhao's body. But this is something I wrote for my idol, so I can't dislike it in front of the camera. Originally I just wanted to take it back and hide it secretly, but I never thought that my aunt would see it before I even took action. Qian Yihan rolled up the rice paper. She didn't want to read this word for a second. Originally, I was thinking that one of your guests this time would be someone who knows Yuan Zhao Ti, so I planned to take a day to record with you. It's okay to meet people on the spot, but if it's someone who's just looking for fame like your idol, forget it. Qian Yaya opened her mouth, but she didn't dare to refute. She knows how enthusiastic her aunt is about Yuan Zhao's body. It would be an exaggeration to say that she is a super fan of Emperor Yuan Zhao. The behavior of my idol probably really offended my aunt. Okay, Qian Yihan hesitated for a moment but threw the rice paper in the trash can directly. It's getting late. You have to continue recording tomorrow. Go back to the house to wash up and go to bed. Yes, 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 Qianyaya quickly nodded and bowed. Auntie, don't work too late and rest early. By the way, what will your process be like tomorrow? I don't know yet, the director said he will be notified early tomorrow morning. Back in the bedroom, Chianyaya washed herself and put on her pajamas. Instead of going to bed immediately, she walked to her desk. Her desk was placed against the wall, and a large poster was posted on the wall in front of her. The idol on the poster is dressed in ancient costume, and he really looks like a handsome nobleman. She originally joined the industry after seeing this poster and this character. But now somehow, the person on the poster in front of her seems to have become illusory, and the figure that once obsessed her so much is getting thinner and thinner in her mind. Asterisk. The guests were woken up by the ringing of mobile phones early in the morning. After reading the fresh news, Zhang Lingzi turned over and sat up. When she opened the door, she saw that Lu Zhengzheng and Su Ling'an had already gotten up and were packing their things quietly. After a while, Tong Yu brought her breakfast and swiped her card directly in. Before she put her things down, she asked, "Has there been any news from the program team?" Zhang Lingzi helped her put breakfast on the table, picked up her phone, unlocked the screen, and handed it over. "We are still preparing to meet before 8 o'clock. Is it possible that we will go on location today? Who planned this issue of calligraphy and painting? The process is getting more and more tricky." After the complaint was over, Tong Yu put down the phone and hung it in the living room. He didn't even make up his own mind about the dress he was wearing. "Which one are you going to wear?" "The gray one from yesterday has been put away." Zhang Lingzi looked at the remaining two pieces. "I don't know if it's the characteristics of the Shanyu's Haiheng brand, or if someone just likes it this way. The colors of the three sets of dresses are all fresh and elegant. Even the gray one she wore yesterday was as light as the dusk clouds of ash. Just the sky blue one. This morning when she opened the curtains, she saw that the sky outside was not as clear as yesterday, and the fog was a bit heavy, and it might rain in the second half of the day. There is always a psychological tackiness on rainy days, so she prefers to dress more neatly. This set of loose and simple sky blue top and bottoms makes her feel more comfortable than another white heavily embroidered dress." Su Ling'an was standing in front of the dress. When Zhang Lingzi said this, he took the dress off and handed it over with a smile. "Azure, are you waiting for the misty rain? Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry." Author, Press 11. Chapter 304. Chapter 304, Dongxi imitates Zhang Nashuan's bad temper. "I'm afraid it's going to rain today." On the short walk from the hotel to the TV station opposite, Suyi looked up at the sky above him. It was gloomy and depressing, and he frowned and came to a conclusion. Lu Zhengzheng was holding one hand by Su Ling'an and took out her mobile phone with the other. "I just checked the weather forecast, it's a thunderstorm." As soon as she finished speaking, she noticed the gaze of Sister Zixi next to her. She quickly put down her phone and said, "Walk well, walk well." Fortunately, after entering the TV station, the air conditioning is powerful and a refreshing feeling hits my face. Suyi couldn't help but sigh in comfort. Although the border town where she lived was remote and backward, at least it was cool in summer. "I really can't get used to the sultry weather here in the imperial capital. I just hope that today's recording can be done inside this TV station and no more outdoor scenes." Chianyaya made her aunt unhappy when she went back last night. She went out very early this morning and has been sitting in the hall for a while. Hearing several footsteps approaching from far away, he quickly moved his eyes away from the phone screen and looked up. A touch of light and gentle azure color suddenly rippled in front of my eyes. After seeing the person clearly, she subconsciously raised a smile and waved, "Teacher Zhang. Yesterday I learned ink making with the old master, and the two of them had a bit of a friendship as classmates." Anyway, Chianyaya felt that she and Zhang Lingzi had established some kind of friendship, so they naturally had to take the initiative to say hello when they met. Zhang Lingzi saw the little girl's energetic smile so early in the morning, and waved in response, and asked casually, "How long have you been here?" "It won't take long, Teacher Zhang, sit down, Qianyaya asked Zhang Lingzi to sit on the sofa next to her. She couldn't help but look at the azure color that made her feel more comfortable. She couldn't help but admire it. He said, Teacher Zhang, your outfit looks great, even better than the light gray dress yesterday. Do you like this style? Qianyaya nodded while moving her gaze to Zhang Lingzi's hair that was randomly picked up with a clip. I think you don't need to move your hair when styling it today. It will look great this way. There's something lazy and casual about the suit. Zhang Lingzi touched the clip that Su Ling'an chose for her before going out in the morning. I think this is good too. Yeah, haha. The suggestion was accepted. Qianyaya's eyes turned into slits with a smile. What broke the pleasant conversation between the two was a sudden intrusion of a voice, which sounded artificially low in the ears. Hi, Yaya, morning, morning, Teacher Zhang. The two people who were chatting turned their heads to look over. Zhang Lingzi glanced across Jing Huai's face with a slight smile, nodded slightly, and her eyes fell on the gray silk embroidered shirt he was wearing on his upper body, and his brows furrowed slightly. For a moment, I was really not sure whether this person did it on purpose or not. Shen Yunqing had just worn a gray embroidered silk dress yesterday, and the next day she saw something similar in color and style, which really made her think more about it. Don't tell me, Jing Huai's outfit today was really intentional. But it wasn't because of Shen Yunqing. He only met Shen Yunqing in the cafeteria last night. At that time, his focus was on Su Qingmei's unknown reason for getting angry. He really didn't pay attention to the color and style of clothes Shen Yunqing was wearing at that time. He will wear this one specially today. First of all, this clothes is a gift from Su Qingmei. This is the first time he has received Su Qingmei's intimate clothes. Secondly, he felt that Su Qingmei gave him this dress because she thought he would look better wearing it. Otherwise, he couldn't let him deliberately look ugly to disgust himself. With these two guesses, when he went out early this morning, he decisively pushed away the clothes that the team stylist had already matched for him and changed into a gray shirt that he thought Su Qingmei would like more. Although Qianyaya was a little disillusioned and disappointed with her idol yesterday because of her handwriting, she had liked Jing Huai for such a long time and had invested a lot of affection in it. Naturally, she could not let go of this feeling all at once. She selectively forgot about the calligraphy pen that she had pushed into the deepest part of the desk drawer. She stood up happily as usual and waved hello, brother Jing Huai, good morning. It was just that when she saw him he was wearing a gray shirt and looked at the gray sky outside the door of the TV station behind him. With the two sides superimposed, the clear and bright figure in his mind suddenly became a little more depressing. In such a day, instead of wearing a bright color, you have to compete with the gloomier sky hanging over everyone's head. This is not the best way to be low-key. What does Jing Hui's brother's styling team do for a living? On the other side, Lu Zhengzheng and Su Ling'an also noticed Jing Hui's appearance today. They sat in the corner and whispered to each other. Enan, do you think the clothes Jing Hui is wearing today look familiar to you? Su Ling'an nodded slightly, and then replied in a breathy voice, I will follow my example. Zheng Zheng looked at her in surprise, you have a sharp mouth. You pretended to be pretty good before. Su Ling'an pursed her lips and smiled sheepishly. Lu Zhengzheng glanced over a few more times, feeling that her status as a fan of Jing Hui Road was on the verge of danger. She originally became a fan of the real person because of the TV series played by Jing Hui, mainly because she liked this persona. But now back to reality, the more she got to know the real person, the more disillusioned she felt. I have to say, your description is quite accurate if you imitate others, who is ugly and who is embarrassed. As he said these words, Lu Zhengzheng also heard the sound of the already modeled filter in his heart belonging to Jing Hui completely shattered at this moment. Seeing that it was almost 8 o'clock, the other three guests and their assistants also hurried over. Lin Yo and Shen Heshan were in good condition. One was habitually silent and the other was quiet with strangers. After the two arrived, They sat on the sofa to rest. Shen Heshen looked at Zhang Lingzi several times, but in the end he still didn't say hello alone in front of everyone around him. Lu Sen, who arrived last, looked a little listless. Even the bright green short-sleeved shirt he was wearing could not save his desolate expression. With him like this, even Shen Heshen couldn't help but reach out and pat his shoulder. "What's wrong with you?" "Don't mention it, I received a piece of news early this morning." Lu Sen pursed his lips bitterly. "It's about today's recording." Shen Heshen was quite interested when he heard the words, "Oh, come and listen." Lu Sen wiped his face and said, "Do you know Mr. Zhang Nashuan? This is no nonsense. Who is a contemporary national treasure level calligrapher and painter. Who doesn't know about traditional Chinese painting?" Shen Heshen couldn't help but roll his eyes at him, and then his eyes lit up as he thought of something. "We are not going to attend Zhang family's event today. A private calligraphy and painting museum. I've always wanted to go there, but it's a pity that Mr. Zhang has rarely opened his museum in recent years." Seeing the excitement of his new friend, Lu Sen pulled his lips and nodded. "Then your wish may really come true this time. But don't be too happy. Today's trip is not just for a visit. Mr. Zhang has requirements. Will give us questions. Set the question in person." This is really, what a surprise. Lu Sen looked at the increasingly excited Shen Heshen, and his expression suddenly became indescribable. "Let me remind you that Mr. Zhang, whom you admire, has a bad temper. He doesn't care whether we are recording a show. If you don't answer well, just wait for criticism." Shen Heshen didn't take this reminder seriously. Old artists all have their own personalities. Lu Sen chuckled softly. As a descendant who had the rare opportunity to face this old man face to face, he was also one of those who had a real experience of this old gentleman's temper. He said that his temper was not very good, which is putting it mildly, but he had a very bad temper. Have you ever experienced being scolded and then going home and being autistic for a week? He was so traumatized. Shen Heshen: "No, it's not that bad, right?" End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 305. Chapter 305 Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum. In the dressing room, Chen Weiwen was dressed as a tour guide and waving a small red flag in his hand. After pushing the door and walking in, he met everyone's gaze and said hello with a smile on his face. "Good morning everyone, today I am still your director Chen, but this time, I am not only the director's guide, but also the tour guide's guide." Suyi pursed her lips that had just been painted with lipstick. Looking at the director's outfit and these words, she knew that today's location must be planned. Lu Sen, who had already known the itinerary in advance, saw a flash of despair in his eyes, and the last bit of luck in his heart was completely lost. Shen Heshen, whose itinerary was revealed in advance, felt a little bit uneasy in anticipation, purely because he was frightened by Lu Sen's words before. Is it okay to be scolded to the point of being autistic? When they got in the car and all the recording machines were turned on, Chen Weiwen turned his back to the screen and said the destination of his trip seriously: "Good morning, distinguished guests. Facing the early morning cough, there is no sunshine. Today, skip it. The bus we are traveling on is about to head to the destination of our trip, the Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum. I think everyone is familiar with this museum. Even if you haven't visited it in person, you must have heard about it in real life or on the internet. Is there anyone who doesn't know the name Zhang Nashuan?" Like thunder piercing the ears. Chen Weiwen looked at Jing Huai, who smiled and cooperated with him. After nodding, he couldn't help but glance at Lu Sen, who was sitting in front of him and looked disheveled. This kid was obviously fine yesterday. What happened today? Suppressing his doubts, he continued to perform his duties as a tour guide. Since everyone knows it, I won't introduce the old man's life here. Today we got the opportunity to visit his private calligraphy and painting museum, which is one of the surprises. Another big surprise, he paused for a moment, and after raising everyone's expectations, he raised his voice slightly and said, "Mr. Zhang will appear in the museum. He has been living in seclusion for the past few years, and the program team has spent a lot of effort to invite him out. You must seize this rare opportunity when the time comes. Any opportunity is naturally an opportunity to ask for advice." Taishan Baidu, like Zhang Nashuan, has retired from the world of calligraphy and painting. It is no exaggeration to say that a word of guidance from him is worth 10 years of reading. Lin Yo was sitting in the last row of the carriage. He had turned away from looking out the window. At this moment, he was only looking at Chen Weiwen, who was holding the flag, with astonishingly bright eyes. If his character hadn't been forced to settle down in the past few years, he would have been tempted to stand up and cheer. He was actually going to see Mr. Zhang Nashuan in his museum. He must seize this opportunity to ask for advice. Zhang Lingzi took out her mobile phone from her pocket without leaving a trace. After seeing that the camera had not moved to her side, she began to silently search for the name Zhang Nashuan. She could tell from the expressions of others at this moment that everyone knew this person and admired him. But she really doesn't know yet, and now she can only improvise. Qian Yaya sat next to Zhang Lingzi. She didn't want to share her joy with the people in the front and back seats, so she looked to her side and said, "Teacher Zhang, it's Mr. Zhang. I've only seen him in documentaries. This time I can finally meet the real person. If I ask for an autograph from the old gentleman, will he give it to me?" Zhang Lingzi looked at the information searched on the phone screen and listened to the voice in her ears. She couldn't help but complain in her heart, how persistent this girl is about autographs. But he said, "What documentary?" "Ah," Qian Yaya was stunned for a moment before reacting, "it's called Contemporary History of Calligraphy and Painting. Mr. Zhang's interview was in the 3rd or 4th issue. I can't remember clearly. It's available on almost all video sites. Look." So for the next time, she watched Zhang Lingzi take out another pair of headphones from her pocket, search for the documentary, and watch it all the way in the car with her phone in hand. Her serious look made her dare not disturb him anymore. It wasn't until the minibus reached its destination and everyone was about to get off that she dared to touch Zhang Lingzi's arm and remind her, "Teacher Zhang, we are here and we are about to get off." Zhang Lingzi took off her headphones, turned off the video, unbuckled her seat belt and followed Qian Yaya in front of her out of the car. Asterisk. Standing in front of everyone is a courtyard wrapped in dark green. The yard is surrounded by pines, bamboos, and cypresses. The dense bushes attract the chirping of birds. Under this somewhat gloomy sky, such strong greenery is undoubtedly eye-catching. As I breathed, I felt that the air around me was much fresher. The old gentleman is old and has a high status, so it is naturally impossible for him to come to the door to greet him in person. Waiting at the door now is the curator hired to take care of the museum's daily life. "Welcome everyone to visit the museum. I am the curator Zhang Ye, and I am also a distant relative of Mr. Zhang. I will lead you to visit today." After he finished speaking, Chen Weiwen walked over and handed the small flag in his hand solemnly. "Next, the responsibility of the tour guide will be handed over to Director Zhang." After thinking about it, he turned around and said emphatically, "The museum is no better than other places. Everyone must listen to Director Zhang's words and never touch things that cannot be touched, otherwise you will be responsible for the consequences." Zhang Lingzi took her eyes away from the stone carvings next to the courtyard door and nodded obediently with the others. Qian Yaya's voice came to her ears, "Director Zhang, are the words Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum engraved on this stone in Mr. Zhang's handwriting? Does Mr. Zhang also practice Yuan Zhao style?" Zhang Lingzi shook her head inwardly. She had just finished watching the documentary Qian Yaya talked about in the car, which naturally also showed some calligraphy and painting works of Mr. Zhang. The handwriting on this stone carving is somewhat similar to the handwriting on those works, but there are some essential differences. However, although the handwriting was not Mr. Zhang's, she guessed that it was Mr. Zhang's student or something, and it was very likely that she was a woman. Not only has he inherited some of the momentum from Mr. Zhang's calligraphy and painting, but he also adds a bit of his own graceful temperament in the transitions of each stroke. Thoughts passed by, and everyone present heard the reply from director Zhang opposite. Actually, this museum was not founded by Mr. Zhang. Its original founder was Mr. Zhang's wife. This stone carving was also the creation of the museum. At the beginning, the old lady set it up. Qianyaya opened her mouth and said ah softly, then the words above were also written by the old lady. Zhang Ye nodded towards her, that's right. But I think the writing on it is quite similar to the handwriting on Mr. Zhang's works. That's because the old lady's calligraphy was taught by the old gentleman. Nalan Yingyu, Zhang Lingzi lowered her eyes and looked at the 4 slightly smaller ancient characters in the lower right corner of the stone carving, and read out softly, is this the old lady's name? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 306. Yes, Zhang Ye glanced at Zhang Lingzi in surprise. As the director of the Nashuan Museum, if a program team is coming to record a program, he naturally needs to know in advance who the guests will be. He naturally knew that Zhang Lingzi and Jing Huai were the only 2 actors among the guests. However, in his long-standing impression, the young actors in the entertainment industry today do have good faces, but there are only a few who have good acting skills, and even fewer who have a certain cultural background. If those amateur guests could pronounce Mrs. Nalan's name at a glance, he wouldn't be so surprised. It happened to be Zhang Lingzi, who he thought was just a face with a hot face. Looking at it so carefully, he somewhat understood why the program team did not invite all amateur guests, but also included 2 actors. The girl standing in front of the stone carving, with her clear eyebrows and slender hair, coupled with her loose azure robe, looks like a beautiful picture full of ancient charm. The end is pleasing to the eye. Who doesn't like to take a second look? Qianyaya came close to the stone carving and saw the 4 words. She also looked at the words Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum carved above. The first word was also in ancient Chinese characters. Her imagination suddenly burst out and she pointed at the words. Xiang Zhang Ye, Director Zhang, is the word Na also the word Na from Mrs. Nalan? Zhang Ye gave her an affirmative answer this time. Everyone was a little curious about this topic, so he simply explained on the spot. At the beginning, Mrs. Nalan suggested that Mr. Zhang combine his works with those they have collected throughout his life. The works of famous artists are put on display for more people to appreciate. However, although Mr. Zhang loves calligraphy and painting, he doesn't like to deal with trivial matters and finds it too troublesome. But Mrs. Nalan never gave up this plan. Since the old man found it troublesome, she decided to do it herself. First, she found someone to repair the courtyard according to the standards of the museum. By the way, this courtyard was once her dowry. Later, I personally took up the pen and asked someone to make this stone carving. Finally, I obtained the old gentleman's permission and moved the works in the old gentleman's study to this museum for the appreciation of interested generations. It can be said that without Mrs. Nalan, there would be no Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum, and I would not be the director. Everyone was fascinated when they heard it. They didn't expect that this museum, which is considered a very famous museum in their calligraphy and painting circles, would have such an unknown past. Qianyaya's emotions were the most ups and downs. Mrs. Nalan loves Mr. Zhang so much. A museum cannot be built easily, especially if it is used to preserve calligraphy and painting works. It takes a lot of effort from planning to completion. Building a museum for the one you love, if this wasn't the ultimate romance, Then she couldn't think of anything else. Zhang Ye was a little emotional when he saw her like this. Although Mrs. Nalan has gone, she left Mr. Zhang this museum full of memories of the two of them. The old man cherishes it very much. He is more willful as he gets older, so these days there are fewer museums open this year. Lu Sen's expression was a little complicated. He had met Mrs. Nalan before. He was still young at that time, but the elegant old man with his white hair still remains clearly in his memory. Mr. Zhang's temper is getting worse and he now almost knows the reason. Zhang Ye waved the small flag and said, "Okay, that's it for the introduction at the door. Please come in with me. Enter the courtyard, you can see green trees and red flowers. Even a small sunflower in the corner, which is less than a person's knee high, is well taken care of. The spacious courtyard is surrounded by quaint old-fashioned buildings, and some modern facilities are cleverly covered, showing good intentions everywhere." Qian Yaya consciously walked beside Zhang Lingzi, looking around and murmuring, there was a competition for the most beautiful museums in the country before. I saw a comment saying that the Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum should also be on the list. Now it seems that's not an exaggeration. Zhang Lingzi agreed with this point. Mrs. Nalan is indeed a wise and thoughtful person. It's a pity. Qian Yaya sounded a little regretful, I can't see it with my own eyes. I think her Yuan Zhao Ti training is better than that of my aunt. All good. Zhang Lingzi. She suspected that this girl might want an autograph even more. The autograph collecting mania is a real success. While leading the way, Zhang Ye did not forget his duty as a part-time tour guide. The museum has 3 areas, but only 2 are currently open. They are the collection of famous historical calligraphy and painting works and the collection of works of Zhang Nashuan and contemporary masters. Which one do you want to visit first? 1. Qian Yai raised her hand habitually before speaking. When Zhang Ye looked over, she asked curiously, Director Zhang, what is the last area that is not open to the public? Zhang Ye, are some of Mrs. Nalan's works during her lifetime. Qian Yaya immediately swallowed back what she wanted to say later, can't we open it today? After a simple show of hands, most people wanted to see the historical works first. After all, Mr. Zhang could collect them. Not to mention, they were absolutely authentic, and their reputation and quality were definitely very high. The key was that they couldn't be seen anywhere else. Everyone soon gathered in the Historical Works exhibition hall. The interior with 3 walls and 1 glass maintains a constant temperature and humidity that is most suitable for the preservation of calligraphy and painting. Many works are hung on the 3 walls in an orderly manner. There is a simple introduction and description of the work below the work, written in elegant small regular script. Zhang Lingzi only glanced at it and recognized that it was also the handwriting of Mrs. Nalan. Although it uses a different font from the stone carving at the door, as long as it is written by the same person, it will have the same writing habits and distinctive personal characteristics. Zhang Lingzi focused on looking at the calligraphy and painting works of Yuan Zhao and later, and finally stopped in front of a familiar ink landscape. She looked at it for a while and then lowered her head to read the introduction to the work below. Title of the work, Blue Waves and Everything. Author, Shenqian Shan. Introduction to the work. It is said that this painting was copied by Shenqian Shan, and the original painting was made by an ancestor of the Shen family. The style of this work is light and distant, and the details are delicate. It is a choice of excellent works. However, I personally think that the work is a little less imposing and a little more tranquil. It would be a great blessing if I could be lucky enough to see the original work. Shenqian Shan, Zhang Lingzi said softly, and her eyes fell back to the painting, her eyes a little far away. The memory that was originally a bit fuzzy slowly became clear at this moment. As expected of the Shen family, he can draw such majestic paintings at such a young age. Just now she felt that this painting was only slightly familiar, because the original work was so majestic, and only less than half of it was left in this painting. You also like Shen Qinshan's works? Zhang Lingzi turned to look at Shen Heshan, who had just walked to her side and stood next to her, and shook her head. I prefer the original work of Blue Waves. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 307. Have you seen the original work? Jing Huai happened to pass behind the two of them and couldn't help laughing when he heard the conversation and stopped. After looking at the camera turned here, he said slowly and in a popular science tone, the original work of Blue Waves has long been lost in the long history. Even the author of the original work is still unknown. With Mr. Zhang's ability, he can only copied works can be collected. Whoever dares to say that he has seen the original work of everything in the Blue Waves is truly bragging. Shen Heshan didn't know what Jing Huai said. He just heard Zhang Lingzi's extraordinarily flat tone when he talked about the original work, and subconsciously couldn't help but ask, and unfortunately someone heard him. He also noticed that there was a camera pointed at him. He didn't care about it. He was not in the entertainment industry anyway, but it would be bad if Zhang Lingzi left the impression of being shameless in front of the audience. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have come over to find someone to find out the news. Shen and Chen both noticed the camera, but it was impossible for Zhang Lingzi not to notice it. Although Jing Huai suddenly came over to forcefully educate him, which was unexpected, she couldn't panic. Is it? Jing Huai's tone paused. Zhang Lingzi shouldn't be so calm. What he wanted to see was a Zhang Lingzi who became flustered in front of the camera and spoke up for herself after completing her science popularization, not the current Zhang Lingzi who didn't even have a breath of confusion. But if he continues to say it, it will be suspected of provocation. The other party responded to all changes by remaining unchanged, so he could only accept it as soon as it was good, smiled and turned around to leave. When the camera moved away, Shen Heshan looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Sister Zhang, I didn't notice anyone nearby just now, and I almost let you know what you said. Zhang Lingzi was really not worried about the little episode just now. Hearing this, she just waved her hands and said, it's nothing. Seeing that Zhang Lingzi really didn't care, Shen Heshan secretly thought to himself that he was worthy of being liked by his divine cousin, so he walked away with peace of mind. After visiting the historical paintings area, we walked through a vibrant corridor filled with indoor green plants and arrived at another area. There are some paintings hanging on the walls that Zhang Lingzi has seen in documentaries, but most of them have never been seen before. You can see the author's character from these paintings, and you can even see the changes in the author's temperament from the paintings in different time periods. Mr. Zhang is undoubtedly a man with a violent temper and a hatred of evil. From the past to the present, it can be seen from the paintings that he has never changed. However, after looking around, what impressed her most was the work of another person. Being placed in this area shows that the artist is a contemporary or even living painter. The painting shows a lush forest, with layers of greenery and full of infinite vitality. But if you look carefully, you can see that there are scattered white bones in the soil under the trees, which are either obscured by leaves and grass, or are half buried in the soil. There are even some dark red traces in the corners. Like the blood of fresh death. In a painting, ink and fine brushwork are used together, life and death coexist, and they coincide with the way of life and death. Zhang Lingzi looked at the introduction of the work below the painting. Title of work, Crushed Down. Author, Jian Sheng. Will it protect the living if it is crushed into mud? It is really a unique piece of work. Until she heard movement from the side, Zhang Lingzi turned her head and saw Su Yi, and saw that the girl looked a little absent-minded. His eyes also fell on the painting opposite. She did not disturb him and walked away quietly. Shen Heshan was being dragged along by Lu Sen for a visit. Suddenly his arms tightened, and Lu Sen's suddenly nervous voice was heard in his ears, he's coming out on crutches. Shen Heshan. Looking along Lu Sen's line of sight, he saw an old gentleman with gray hair and a strong aura walking towards him from the direction of the closed area, and not only the two of them, but also other people at the scene noticed the figure and looked over at it. Zhang Nashuan wore a serious face and his sharp eyes swept across the several young people present. He waited until everyone's hearts tightened when they saw him, and then he said calmly, "Have you finished the tour?" Lu Sen watched the old man staring over, his lips trembling. "Oops, almost done." "That's okay," Zhang Nashuan smiled kindly at the crowd and dropped the bombshell. "Your director asked me to set a challenge for you, old man. I thought about it again and again, and I just came up with a solution." Lu Sen bit the bullet and said, What can we do?" "When you first learn calligraphy and painting, you have to go through the process of copying ready-made works, and then you start to try to create independently. I happen to have a lot of works here, so you just pick one and copy it. As long as I can see it after copying, after a while, you have passed the challenge." Everyone looked at each other suddenly, but they didn't expect that it was actually a copy. You must know that after they can create independently, they rarely copy other people's works. The time I spend creating is often not enough, so how can I have time to copy other people's works? After all, no matter how good the copying is, it can only be used to practice skills. There is no more meaningful way to create a work alone. But since Mr. Zhang has already said this, what else can I do? Just copy it? Lu Sen's first action was, "Mr. Zhang, we have no equipment. Since you are going to copy, you should have a table, as well as necessities such as pens, inks, paper, inkstones and paints." Zhang Nashuan nodded to Zhang Ye. Zhang Ye nodded with a smile, clapped his hands and summoned several staff members in museum uniforms. "After you have selected the works to be copied, you can apply for pens, inks, paper, inkstones and other tools from them." Everyone. It seems that he is well prepared. The pressure now returns to the guests. With so many works, which one is best to copy? The first one to make the choice was Su Yi, not Lu Sen, who was the most active. "I choose the painting crushed down." Zhang Lingzi glanced over after hearing this and was not surprised. Just now she felt the difference between Su Yi and the painting. It's like looking at someone through the painting. With the first one in mind, Lin Yo and Lu Sen soon chose the paintings they wanted to copy. The former chose a famous historical painting, and the latter chose a work by Zhang Nashuan. Everything in the blue waves. Two voices, speaking at the same time. Zhang Lingzi and Shen Heshan also looked at each other under the gaze of everyone. Shen Heshan was a little surprised and opened his mouth but said nothing. He will never repeat the lesson he learned before. Jing Huai's eyes flashed when he saw this, and he looked at the old Zhang Nashuan who was standing there. "Mr. Zhang, can several people choose the same work to copy for this challenge?" Zhang Nashuan raised his eyelids and glanced at him, nodded lightly, and said in an indifferent tone, "It doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want." "Then I'll choose blue waves and everything. I also like the artistic conception presented in this work." Qian Yaya belatedly realized that she had stayed until the end. She looked at the three people in front of her who had chosen the same painting with a somewhat tangled face. "Well, then I'll choose this one too." She didn't choose this just to join in the fun. Anyway, she chose a difficult disease. With so many works in front of her, she couldn't make up her mind at the moment, so she might as well see what the four of them finally copied. She is such a clever little girl. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 308. Chapter 308, Write Directly. As desks were laid out one after another in front of the paintings that the guests wanted to copy, the screen in the reviewer's observation room also lit up. Li Wangsuan raised her eyes and saw the environment of everyone on the screen. Without waiting for the PD's introduction, she smiled and said, "This is at the Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum, right?" Mr. Lee has good eyesight, the PD quickly complimented. Today's recording location for the guests is at the Nashuan Private Painting and Calligraphy Museum. There is also a challenge there. The owner of the museum, Mr. Zhang, just announced that they will select works for copying on the spot. Copying, Li Wangsuan looked thoughtfully at the guests preparing on the split screen. It's Teacher Zhang's style. Teacher Zhang. Li Wangsuan smiled faintly at the camera. Teacher Zhang has taught at the Chinese Painting Academy for more than 30 years, and I was one of his students. Everyone suddenly showed a surprised expression. I didn't expect there to be such a connection. Li Wangsuan is already regarded as a senior figure with a high status in the world of calligraphy and painting. Being the teacher of this senior figure gave everyone present an additional layer of understanding of the name Zhang Nashuan. Su Qingmei also silently put away her gaze and looked to the side. Even Li Wangsuan looked very respectful to the gray-haired old man on the screen, so she couldn't show disrespect. Moving her eyes to the split screen, she saw at first sight the azure figure that caught people's attention immediately even though she wasn't standing at the front of the crowd. His eyes moved to the side uncontrollably again. At first, I didn't think it was strange to see Shen Yunqing change her outfit after seeing her again today. After all, she changes her clothes a day and never wears the clothes she wears a second time. The other party's outfit today also surprised her. Although beauties look good no matter what they wear, if they happen to wear the right style, it will have a double bonus effect. Made her heart even more determined to win. Until I saw Zhang Lingzi, who also changed into another outfit on the split screen. The blue color was indifferent, and at this moment, although Shen Yunqing's clothes today were not amic, there were many similar elements on it. Su Qingmei couldn't help but imagine the scene of these two people standing together, and her face couldn't help but look ugly for a moment. When she looked at the split screen again, she felt that the azure figure was particularly eye-catching. Li Wangsuan came from the side with a slightly surprised voice. Did the four of them choose the same painting to copy? Su Qingmei then glanced at Jing Huai and the other three who were on the same split screen as Zhang Lingzi. After pausing on the gray shirt on Jing Huai's upper body, she cleared her throat and said, "What painting is so popular?" One of the shots also moved to the painting hanging on the wall very cooperatively at this moment. It turns out to be Shen Qinshan's Blue Waves. A commentator sitting on the other side of Li Wangsuan said with some doubts. It is said that this painting was copied by Shen Qianshan from his ancestors' paintings. I didn't expect that this painting would be the most popular one. The painting that the guests welcomed was actually this one. Although it is a copy, the original work has been lost long ago, and this is the only one in existence. Shen Qianshan was also a famous painter after the Yuan and Zhao dynasties. This painting used many techniques, which is not easy to copy. Su Qingmei glanced at Shen Yunqing, who remained silent, and said with a smile, "This shows that our four guests are very confident in themselves. They haven't even started painting yet, and I'm already looking forward to the final one finished product." Comparison can only be achieved by copying the same paintings. Two of the four people specialize in painting. Jing Huai has studied under famous calligraphy and painting masters, but she wants to see how Zhang Lingzi stands out from them. Shen Yunqing listened to the voice coming from the side and rarely agreed in his heart with what Su Qingmei just said. He is also looking forward to the final product, especially His Majesty's. If he remembers correctly, Your Majesty should have seen the original work of Blue Waves and everything. Selecting this one specially from so many works in the exhibition must have some special meaning in my heart. As for the other three people who also chose this painting, he has gorgeously ignored them. Asterisk. 2 shots for each person, one on the guests and one on the table in front of them. The pens, inks, paper and inkstones are all ready. If you are more impatient, you will already pick up the pen and dip it in ink to start sketching lines. Before Lusen could finish writing, he was slapped on the back of the head. Turning his head, he was faced with a face that was glaring at him. "Have you forgotten the first element of copying? You are so anxious to start writing, and you are in a hurry to go home for dinner. Lucien shrank his head in frustration. I know, let's observe first, he defended himself in a low voice, but I am very familiar with your paintings. I said, why don't you choose other paintings and just consider them my paintings? Are you trying to save trouble? Luxon. He is so difficult. In the exhibition hall next door. 3 heads gathered in front of the same painting. If you are just appreciating a painting, you don't need to get so close, but if you are copying, you must see every detail of the painting before you start writing. Qianyaya stared at the painting for a while, turned her head left and right, and then realized that there was one less person approaching. Looking back, she saw that not far behind her, Zhang Lingzi had already dipped the color she had just mixed in and was about to put pen to paper. Suddenly his eyes widened in surprise. Teacher Zhang, why don't you come over and observe for a while? Although it is a copying, it often produces a lot of waste manuscripts. Ink painting is no better than oil painting, watercolor, etc. The wrong color can be covered up. If you use ink incorrectly, you will have to start over, so every time you write, you must have it in mind. But she had just discovered that there was only one piece of rice paper given to each person. This also means that their copying can only be successful once, and there is no chance to try again after failure. Even though she has copied more than 100 works of famous artists since she first started to learn painting, Qianyaya did not dare to say that she would be able to successfully copy them in one go, so she observed even more carefully than usual this time. Zhang Lingzi, who didn't even step forward to observe and just started writing, seemed to her like she was giving up the challenge and choosing to mess it up. I just watched it. There was no time to stop it, the stroke had already been made. Qianyaya didn't feel like saying anything when she saw this, so she turned back and continued to look at the painting while slowly sketching out the details in her mind. But because of her 2 words just now, Shen Heshan and Jing Huai, who were also carefully observing the painting, couldn't help but look back. There was a layer of doubt and worry in Shen Heshan's eyes. Jing Huai's eyes fell on the rice paper written by Zhang Lingzi, and he saw only one stroke here and there, and he smiled contemptuously in his heart. Now is not the time to highlight your differences. You have already finished observing the paintings just now. Who are you kidding? The attitude when painting was so casual, he wanted to see what this person could draw in the end. The movements of all the guests can be seen in the observation room. Lucien here just received an unceremonious lesson from Mr. Zhang because he did not observe carefully before starting to write. When he turned around, he saw that Zhang Lingzi had already started to write. Looking at Mr. Zhang transforming into an invigilator and patrolling the exhibition hall under the camera, Su Qingmei couldn't help but excitedly point her finger at the table when she thought of what would happen next. Be brave, you will be the next one to be scolded. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 309. Chapter 309, Once you come here, you won't leave. In addition to the guests, there are also many staff who are busy behind the scenes in the exhibition hall. But now that the guests were copying the paintings, everyone kept silent in a tacit agreement, and even the necessary movements were done lightly. Zhang Nashuan said nothing when he saw this, but there was a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. He looked at the young men who were carefully observing the painting and didn't notice him coming in at all, and couldn't help but nodded. In calligraphy and painting, the most taboo thing is impetuousness. Then his eyes shifted and he saw another person standing in front of one of the desks. He immediately frowned and walked over quietly under Su Qingmei's expectant eyes. Although his steps were light, Zhang Lingzi, who was laying out the colors, still heard him. She even heard that one of the visitors' feet was heavier and the other was lighter. Thinking of the old Mr. Zhang she had seen before, he was holding a cane, and she could guess who the owner of the footsteps was without looking up. With his eyes lowered, his hand made another stroke without any pause. Zhang Nashuan saw that the other conspicuous person after Lucen was a girl. He paused for a moment in scolding him. He frowned and thought about how to teach him a lesson tactfully. He casually glanced at the girl who had already fallen. Several strokes of rice paper. However, seeing this, I could no longer say anything. I wanted to reprimand. Step forward and stand next to the table, watching helplessly as another stroke was written on the rice paper. Silence, silence again. Although the other party came over, he didn't say anything. Zhang Lingzi didn't have the habit of talking to others while painting. So the old man and the young man maintained such a strange state. One of them continued to write slowly and slowly, adjusting colors and changing brushes. The other's gaze fell on the rice paper that was gradually becoming richer and remained motionless. It wasn't until Qianyaya finally finished observing that she felt she knew what was going on, and turned around to see Mr. Zhang standing next to Zhang Lingzi's table. She couldn't help but exclaimed, breaking the silence in this corner. Facing the old gentleman's slightly dissatisfied look, Qianyaya shrank her head in timidity. When she passed by the other side of Zhang Lingzi's table, she didn't dare to stop and see how many paintings she had drawn, and quickly returned to her own place. In front of the desk. The observation room was also quiet. Su Qingmei looked at the old man who was standing silently next to Zhang Lingzi for some reason on the split screen, and the movement of tapping the table with her fingertips unconsciously accelerated a bit. "Why don't you start to reprimand me? Why are you just looking at the mess Zhang Lingzi drew?" Some doubtful voices sounded from the side. Could this be? She stopped before she finished speaking. Su Qingmei tapped her finger on the table for a moment, and then she heard someone ask before her, "Mr. Li, what did you see?" Li Wangxuan's eyes were fixed on the split screen belonging to Zhang Lingzi at this moment, looking at the plain white finger holding the brush on the screen, the tip of the pen lightly falling on the rice paper. Each stroke seemed casual, but inexplicably carried a feeling of success in her chest. Means. As the colors on the rice paper spread out little by little, there was a hint of turbulence. She moved her mouth, but she still didn't express the guess in her heart. Let's take a look at it after the painting is finished. To be honest, she wasn't sure. After all, this painting technique is so rare that it has been at risk of being lost a long time ago. Even she has only seen it in ready-made paintings and has never seen anyone use it in painting. Su Qingmei couldn't help but turn her head and glance at her, then looked at Mr. Zhang, who was still standing silently next to Zhang Lingzi on the split screen. She felt that her heart was falling, and the initial excitement was long gone. As time passed by, Qianyaya and Jinghuai were still a little nervous, fearing that Mr. Zhang would suddenly move from Zhang Lingzi's side to them. They don't have the confidence to calmly copy the paintings with an invigilator like Mr. Zhang watching from the sidelines. Until they noticed that the old man didn't move towards them at all, even though he stood next to Zhang Lingzi and didn't move for some reason, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Sacrifice one person and make others happy. Zhang Nashuan changed his hand to the cane. Zhang Ye, who was standing outside the camera, noticed his movement and hurriedly stepped forward and asked in a low voice, "Uncle, let me help you go back and rest for a while." Zhang Nashuan waved his hands and kept his eyes on the rice paper on the table in front of him. Like an invigilator who is staring closely at the candidates, he also whispered, "Just bring me a stool." This time, even Zhang Ye couldn't help but look at what Zhang Lingzi had drawn on the paper, which actually made his uncle not want to leave for a moment. At this sight, I was also stunned. Although he has never studied calligraphy and painting, his uncle once bluntly said that he has no talent in this area. But as a curator of a calligraphy and painting museum for so many years, my eyesight and appreciation ability have been developed over time. The painting in front of him was obviously unfinished, but when he glanced at it, he felt like he was being rushed towards by layers of water vapor. Looking at the copied painting on the wall, the blue waves on it are a bit tranquil, like water gently covering your calves. But the copy in front of you has the momentum of a wave that will beat you to death. Is this really a copying? Thinking about the old man's instructions, Zhang Ye finally resisted and stopped looking. Shortly after turning around and leaving, he brought back a cushioned chair and placed it behind the old man. The sound of the chair landing finally made Zhang Lingzi pause in cleaning her brush, and she turned her head to look over. Zhang Nashuan had just sat down and looked up. After an old man and a young man sat and stood silently looking at each other for a moment, Zhang Lingzi continued to wash his pen, and Zhang Nashuan implemented his plan to become a nail shop. At this moment, the three people standing next to him were completely relieved. At the same time, they couldn't help but wonder, why did Mr. Zhang keep staring at Zhang Lingzi? Qian Yaya silently sympathized in her heart for a few seconds. Taking advantage of the opportunity to step forward to observe the original work again, she boldly took a quick glance at Zhang Lingzi's table when she passed by. With just one glance, her mind couldn't help but go blank for a moment. When I look at the original painting on the wall again, the astonishing glimpse just now still echoes in my mind. Did you finish the painting? It is so simple that it cannot be a simpler conversation, and you may not even be able to hear it unless you are close. Jinghui paused as he put down his pen. When he came to his senses, he saw that a little bit had been left on the blank space of the rice paper, and his face suddenly turned pale. I must have been unable to withstand the pressure of being watched from the sidelines all the time, so I chose to end it hastily. Otherwise, how could I have painted so fast? Only by thinking this way could he calm down as quickly as possible to make up for the mistake that had just occurred, and his ears automatically ignored the gentle voice of Mr. Zhang just now. This is under the camera, Su Qingmei is watching their every move in the observation room, he must not lose. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 310. The finished painting was laid out on the table carelessly. Zhang Lingzi removed the paperweight and was about to reach for it when a pair of wrinkled hands stretched out from beside him and carefully picked up the painting. Zhang Nashuan let go of his cane and stood up. He wanted to say something, but seeing that there were three unfinished guests beside him, it might affect them, so he had to swallow his words. Now that the painting is done, I'll take it away first, okay? Zhang Lingzi took a look at the painting and said, "No, please do as you please." The wrinkled face suddenly widened, "You are very good." If Lu Sen heard this attitude and comment, he would probably be shocked on the spot. The camera on the side faithfully transmitted the scene to the reviewer's observation room. After seeing Zhang Lingzi's completed painting on the split screen, Su Qingmei felt her heart sinking to the bottom compared to the joy that spread from the bottom of her heart to her face. Just as she was about to question that the painting Zhang Lingzi copied was not the same as the original, this was the only point she could find to criticize Zhang Lingzi. As a result, before I could speak, I heard the comment from Mr. Zhang. This person has already commented very well. If she mentions it again, she will not question Zhang Lingzi, but Mr. Zhang. She did not forget that Li Wangxuan, who did not give her any face, was still a student of Mr. Zhang. But he was really unwilling to do so, so he could only speak with a tone of curiosity and confusion. I remember that the challenge for the guests this time was not copying. I see that the works copied by others are almost exactly the same as the original works. Zhang Lingzi, the copied works look completely different from the original works. Although the final picture is also very good, does it no longer belong to the category of copying? Even if there is no way to criticize Zhang Lingzi for not being good at painting, she still has to be labeled as being deliberately unique. The relief on Li Wangxuan's face paused, but before she noticed this change, Su Qingmei secretly rejoiced, and an unmistakable voice came from the other side of her. Copying from ancient times to the present has always been difficult and easy. How to explain? You can copy the ancient people's ideas and copy the ancient human form. From physical resemblance to spiritual resemblance, copying is a process of continuous improvement. Since copying is to make people improve, why should we do it? If you deliberately pursue resemblance and make your abilities regress, it's better not to draw. In front of the camera, Shen Yunqing glanced at Su Qingmei expressionlessly, and then continued to speak bluntly. In my opinion, although Shen Qinshan's Blue Waves has the artistic conception, it has lost its momentum. Teacher Zhang in her paintings to make up for the original missing momentum, regardless of the historical value, I am personally more optimistic about teacher Jiang's Blue Waves. Su Qingmei was chilled by Shen Yunqing's look, and then she heard that he bluntly defended Zhang Lingzi without any scruples while recording the show, and even criticized famous painters in history unceremoniously. If she hadn't already mastered the art of hiding her emotions after being in the entertainment industry for so many years, she would have been able to break it on the spot. What made her even more anxious was that Li Wangsuan also nodded, and clearly agreed with Shen Yunqing's point of view. Yes, although today's challenge is copying, you don't have to limit yourself to just copying. If you have already mastered it, techniques in the original paintings, and have the confidence to paint better works. If it were me, I wouldn't want to copy just for the sake of copying. In the end, I would only get an identical painting. At Zhang Lingzi's level, improving myself is the most important thing. Nothing else matters. These words made the other two commentators couldn't help nodding. Su Qingmei almost bit her back molar when she saw the trend was gone forever. But after thinking about the consequences of cancelling the national Taiwan variety show, I could only reluctantly shut up and say less and make less mistakes. Looking at Jing Huai, who was still immersed in copying on the split screen, the disappointment in his heart became even stronger. He also said that he had studied under famous teachers, not even Zhang Lingzi, which was really disappointing. Asterisk. After Zhang Lingzi's painting was taken away, she didn't just stand there and wait for others to finish painting. She gestured to turn off the microphone, asked Chen Weiwen that she could move freely now, and then left her seat. Hearing the footsteps in front of him walking away, the remaining three people couldn't help but feel a little more anxious. Shen Heshan and Qian Yaya can still be stable, but Jing Huai thinks that even if Zhang Lingzi can calligraphy and painting, their main business is in the entertainment industry, and their level will definitely not be as good as Shen Heshan and Qian Yaya, who specialize in painting. But now the development of the situation has obviously exceeded his expectation. Zhang Lingzi was actually the first of them to complete it. Even if he kept telling himself not to be anxious, it would be great if he could really control himself and not be anxious. In a panic, he accidentally picked the wrong brush, dipped it in paint and quickly landed on the paper. Originally, there should have been a thin line drawn at that place, but when it fell on the paper, it was a much thicker line, which instantly destroyed the originally harmonious picture. Li Wangsuan glanced at the split screen belonging to Jing Huai. When she saw the obviously wrong line on the rice paper, she couldn't help but sigh, "My character is not good, I'm just too impatient." This is human nature, just like during an exam. If someone leaves the room after answering the questions early, even if there is a lot of time left to answer the questions, the person who left first will still leave a lot of trouble for those who have not finished answering the questions. Psychological pressure. But what can be done? People have already finished their answers and they can't hold back. This will test the ability of the remaining people to withstand pressure. The same is true for this copying, which not only tests each person's painting skills, but also their character. If your character is not strong enough, it is not surprising that you will make mistakes and fail. Half an hour passed unknowingly. First Shen Heshan, then Lin Yo, and Qian Yaya all raised their hands to indicate that they had completed the painting. Jing Huai's hand holding the brush was shaking, and he felt that everyone around him was looking at him. Looking at the painting in front of him that he was not even satisfied with, he couldn't put down a single stroke. He closed his eyes and put the brush back. There seems to be no point in continuing to persist. The last submission was completed, and no one expected it to be Lucerne. Lucien said that he didn't want to either, but he was afraid that he would be criticized by the old man for not taking it seriously enough if he handed it over too soon. Among the 7 guests, he seemed to be the only one who had a particularly difficult time recording. It can be seen that sometimes being too familiar is not a good thing. The old man was not polite to him at all. In an empty room in the museum, when everyone was invited in, they saw 2 distinct rows of works hung on one of the walls. The upper row is a few original works that are still closely protected, while the lower row is the works copied by the 7 of them. At a glance, it's clear. Standing in front of the work, the cane in Zhang Nashuan's hand has now become a teaching stick. Look, this is the result that you spent nearly 2 hours copying. The teaching stick in his hand landed precisely under the work copied by Lucien, this one, Lucien. Lucien, who was named, bravely walked from the back of the crowd to the front. He took a deep breath and prepared to be taught a lesson. He bent slightly and bowed, "Please give me some advice, Mr. Zhang." In the next few minutes, Shen Heshan finally saw how profound Mr. Zhang's training skills were. He looked at his own work posted next to Lucien's work and silently hugged himself.